March 6, 1945. 3:47 p.m. Cologne Cathedral Square, Germany. The gunner's periscope fractured into a network of cracks as Feldwebel Karl Hoffmann pressed his face against it, squinting to make out the unrecognizable outline advancing from the debris-littered roadway. For 3 years, he had committed every American tank silhouette to memory. The tall Sherman with its 75mm peashooter, the Stuart light tanks that Tiger crews derisively nicknamed toy Panzers, and even the infrequently seen jumbo Shermans outfitted with extra armor that nevertheless were unable to breach a Tiger's front hull from more than 500 meters away. Yet what he saw now was something altogether different. "Das ist kein Sherman," he muttered over the intercom, a quiver in his voice that his fellow crew members had never heard before. "This isn't a Sherman." Through the damaged sight, he made out the oversized barrel, both longer and thicker than any American tank weapon he had ever seen. The hull appeared lower and more angular, the armor seemed sloped and likely cast instead of welded. The turret loomed huge, almost mismatched with the hull, as if a large anti-aircraft cannon had been installed on a tank's body. His thoughts raced through identification manuals, silhouette charts, intelligence notes. Nothing fit what he was seeing. In exactly 18 seconds, Karl Hoffmann and his team would become among the earliest German tank crews ever to find out that the Americans had finally produced a machine capable of destroying them from any range, at any angle. The Panther, operated by Wilhelm Bartelborth from Panzer Brigade 106, had already been taught this same lesson 3 minutes before. The crew of 5 inside never had a chance to identify what had hit them. The M26 Pershing's 90mm M3 cannon fired first. Its armor-piercing round moved at 853 meters per second, bridging the 120 meters between the two armored vehicles in less than a blink for Hoffmann. The shell impacted the Panther's frontal turret armor, the 100mm steel plate, capable of rebuffing dozens of Sherman shells in France and Belgium, fractured with the force. The 90mm shell, still full of kinetic force, blasted through the crew compartment before exploding. The statistics of Allied victory were being written not in strategic plans, but on manufacturing floors and in harrowing clashes that would destroy every conviction these men had about their foes, their nation, and their beliefs. German dominance in tank warfare had been forged in blood and steel ever since the Tiger I made its battlefield debut at Leningrad in August 1942. For 2.5 years, German heavy tank operators lived inside vehicles that seemed to break every principle of armored combat. Their 88mm guns were capable of knocking out any Allied tank from in excess of 2,000 meters. With frontal hull armor 100mm thick and turret protection at 120mm, they were practically impervious to standard Allied tank armament at regular fighting distances. This psychological impact matched their mechanical dominance. Members of Schwer Panzer Abteilung 506 spoke about the sense of invulnerability that piloting Tigers brought with it. Statistically, it was clear as well. The American M4 Sherman's 75mm M3 could only get through the Tiger's frontal shielding at less than 100 meters, and only when using specialized rounds at optimal angles. In contrast, the Tiger's 88mm KWK-36 could smash a Sherman's frontal hull at 2,000 meters. By December 1944, German tankers had devised routine strategies aimed at capitalizing on this hardware edge. They would set up Tigers and King Tigers at the greatest practical range, using their superior optics and firepower to knock out Allied tanks well before they could get close enough to cause harm. Individual Tigers could and frequently did stall entire Allied pushes. The most well-known example was at Villers-Bocage in June 1944, when SS Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann's lone Tiger knocked out 14 tanks, 2 anti-tank guns, and 13 additional vehicles in under 15 minutes. While Wittmann himself would die in August 1944, several months ahead of the Pershing's appearance, this advantage fostered a psychological lift that went well beyond the front. Allied tankers suffered from Tiger phobia, mistakenly reporting any German armored vehicle as a Tiger and drastically overestimating true Tiger engagements. Meanwhile, crews of heavy German tanks developed an almost superstitious trust in their own indestructibility, adorning their gun barrels with kill rings much like fighter pilots. But out of view from these overly assured crews -8,000 kilometers away in Detroit's tank manufacturing plant, American designers had been laboring on a project known as T-26 since September 1942. Their goal was to create a tank that would demolish the legend of German armored invincibility. The path leading to the M26 Pershing was marked by a harsh awakening. American tank development had slipped perilously behind. The M4 Sherman, which served as the mainstay of U.S. armored units, had its design finalized in 1941, a time when the most formidable German tank was the Panzer IV, armed with a short-barreled 75 mm cannon. When Shermans encountered Tigers in Normandy and Italy, they found themselves outmatched in all crucial areas: armor, firepower, and combat distance. The Pershing Development Initiative became an urgent project that engaged 14 primary contractors, 300 suppliers, and upwards of 50,000 laborers spanning 22 different states. General Motors' Fischer Body Division, which had been assembling Sherman tanks at its Grand Blanc facility in Michigan, was directed to rapidly convert its operations to build the new heavy tank. The modifications were dramatic. Innovative turret casting methods, completely new transmission assemblies, and, most importantly, the addition of a 90 mm cannon previously reserved for tank destroyers and anti-aircraft platforms. The 90 mm M3 gun stood as a testament to American technical prowess. Originating from the acclaimed 90 mm anti-aircraft weapon, it could launch a 24-pound armor-piercing projectile at speeds greater than 2,800 feet per second. The M82 APC standard round could punch through 119 mm of armor at 500 yards, sufficient to breach a Tiger's frontal defense at battle distances. The advanced T-30E16 HVAP shell, featuring a tungsten carbide penetrator, could pierce 221 mm at that same range, making it a threat to even the formidable King Tiger. This entire project unfolded under a level of secrecy never seen before. Fischer tank arsenal workers were informed they were assembling an upgraded Sherman model. Parts were fabricated at distinct sites to ensure that the complete layout stayed unknown to any single worker. When the initial 20 Pershings were dispatched to Europe in January 1945, they were described as heavy maintenance equipment and concealed with tarpaulins. On January 15, 1945, at New York's port of embarkation, the premier 20 M26 Pershings were loaded on vessels headed for Europe amid tight security and the cover of night. Each vehicle was enveloped in a water-resistant protective wrap and tagged with misleading shipping numbers. The hand-picked crews slated to man them had been training separately at Fort Knox since November, bound by secrecy under threat of court-martial. Traversing the U-boat patrolled seas lasted 11 days. The Pershings were stowed below decks, shielded behind rows of standard Shermans, hidden from view even to most members of the ship's personnel. During the voyage, the tank crews devoted their time to studying German armor identification charts and rehearsing their cover story. They posed as replacement crews for regular Sherman tank units. The Pershings reached Antwerp on January 26, 1945, once more arriving after nightfall. They were swiftly moved by special trains to the 3rd Armored Division's maintenance site close to Düren, Germany. At this location, the crews carried out their final preparations while Major General Maurice Rose, the division's commanding officer, conducted an in-person briefing with battalion commanders regarding the new tank. On February 25, 1945, the initial 4 Pershings were allocated to the 3rd Armored Division as it advanced toward the Rhine. Each vehicle was assigned to a separate task force and concealed within standard Sherman companies, with strict instructions only to fight if confronted by German heavy armor. The crews painted them in standard olive drab and applied division markings to allow them to blend into their surroundings, yet their longer barrels and lower silhouettes made them recognizable to experienced observers. German intelligence failed entirely. Even with one of the war's most formidable intelligence networks, the Wehrmacht was oblivious to the Pershing's existence. German leaders were convinced that Americans had chosen to prioritize mass production over advanced design as a lasting policy, not realizing that American factories could develop heavy tanks without ceasing Sherman output. On February 26, 1945, near Germany, the Pershing suffered its first combat loss. The T-26E3, dubbed Fireball, was taken out by a Tiger I in a surprise attack at close range. The Tiger's 88mm shell hit the Pershing's gun mantlet, resulting in the deaths of the gunner and loader. Nonetheless, the Pershing was salvaged and put back into action on March 7, illustrating American proficiency in repairs and recovery. The following week brought scattered reports to German command about engagements with an unfamiliar American tank equipped with a lengthier gun and sturdier armor compared to the Sherman. One Panther crew reported being destroyed from 1,800 meters by a single round from an unrecognizable American tank. Most notably, all reports included the same observation. The tank carried a noticeably longer and larger gun than the usual Sherman's 75mm. On March 6, 1945, the battle at Cologne Cathedral would become the most widely recorded tank clash of World War II, with Signal Corps cameraman Jim Bates capturing it on film. The day started with German units placing their remaining tanks around Cathedral Square. Wilhelm Bartelborth, leading a Panther from Panzer Brigade 106, felt sure of success despite the U.S. advance. The open area in the square provided unobstructed lines of fire, and the tank's positions behind debris offered some hull protection. At 1,520 hours, Bartelborth noticed movement near the ruined German Hotel. Using his periscope, he saw what he initially described as an odd Sherman type armed with a longer cannon. He told his gunner to open fire at 300 meters, which was point-blank distance for the Panther's high-velocity 75mm gun. The Panther fired first, the shell hitting the pursuing tank's front armor, but instead of penetrating, it glanced off in a spray of sparks. Bartelborth had precisely 3 seconds to register this anomaly before the Pershing's shot arrived. Staff Sergeant Robert Earley, who commanded the Pershing known as Eagle 7, had already locked on to the Panther with his gun sight. Corporal Clarence Smuyer, his gunner, lined up the crosshairs on the Panther's mantlet and fired. The 90mm shell ripped through the Panther's turret front. The tank erupted in flames as its ammunition ignited. The footage shot by Jim Bates documents the subsequent events. Another nearby German tank, though accounts differ on whether it was a Tiger or another Panther, tried to respond but was also knocked out by the Pershing with a single shot to the front. The entire skirmish lasted under 5 minutes but proved beyond doubt that U.S. tanks could now rival German armor in terms of firepower. The destruction of German tanks near the Cologne Cathedral sparked a serious intelligence issue within the Wehrmacht. Oberkommando West quickly distributed urgent orders instructing all units to immediately report any encounters with unfamiliar American heavy tanks, including comprehensive descriptions and assessments of their capabilities. The resulting reports revealed a technological shock that was difficult for German leadership to comprehend. Numerous crews recounted experiences with American tanks equipped with 90mm class guns and heavy front armor, successfully eliminating Panthers and Tigers from distances greater than 1,500 meters. German crews began calling this vehicle the Long Gun Sherman, unable to imagine that it was an altogether new model of American heavy tank. This confusion lingered for several weeks, leading to mistakes in tactics as German crews tried to battle Pershings by employing anti-Sherman strategies. The Panzerwaffe's instructional system found it challenging to adapt. Training centers possessed no data regarding the new American tank. There were no identification guides available, and tactical instruction books operated under the assumption that American tank guns could not frontally penetrate German heavy tanks. By the middle of March 1945, approximately 20 Pershings had become operational in the European conflict zone, with additional units arriving every week. Although this figure appears minor compared to the immense total of Shermans in use, the mental effect far outweighed the proportional presence. German tank units who were previously used to engaging Shermans without fear now entered every confrontation with a sense of unpredictability. The ratio of destroyed tanks illustrates only a segment of the situation. In the few engagements where Pershings confronted German armor, they succeeded in achieving favorable outcomes. However, with just 20 tanks actually fighting, analyzing the statistics is inherently difficult. What truly counted was the doubt it introduced. German tank operators could not reliably differentiate Pershings from Shermans at long range, leading to hesitation during clashes. Production statistics proved even more consequential. By the start of 1945, Germany was barely able to build 100 tanks each month, while American production had generated a total of 2,222 M26 tanks before the war concluded, with the Fischer body Grand Blanc plant alone manufacturing 1,739 units. German crews who found out about these production numbers through interrogations or captured papers recognized that their adversaries were not just technically advanced. Their opponents could make good on losses at a pace Germany had never equaled, even in its strongest periods. German analysis of captured damaged Pershing parts and the investigation of destroyed tanks provided both engineers and crews with their initial hands-on examination of American heavy tank construction. What they learned overturned all of their existing beliefs about American armored vehicle engineering. The turret was cast in a single solid piece of manufacturing process on a scale Germany had never mastered. The Ford GAF V8 powerplant produced 500 horsepower, offering a degree of reliability beyond the reach of German engines. The tank's transmission system included sophisticated elements that struck Germans as extraordinarily intricate but ran seamlessly. Technical officers concluded that this was not merely an improved model. Each part illustrated another level of advanced design.